The Islamic Republic of Iran just threatened Israel in a game-changing way. And folks, that came with a 72-hour timeline. Make no mistake, it has huge implications. All right, folks, let's get into this. Now, I am being a bit on the risky side by sharing this story with you literally 5 or 6 days after it was issued. Now, I want to do this because there is a strategic reason behind why I'm actually giving this to you right now. As I have said before, the name of the game for me is not to be the first person to the story. The name of the game for me is to be the person that provides for you the best analysis regarding the issues that you are seeing so that you're better able to process what's going on. And sometimes the ability to give you better analysis means that I have to time it the way I'm timing it right now. So as we get into this story, make no mistake about it, we are not finished with the 72-hour timeline, but by the time you watch this, the 72-hour timeline will have come and gone, and I'm here to tell you that the reason why I chose to do the story right now and play it literally 5 or 6 days later is because I want you to understand that the countdown doesn't matter. It's actually the nature of the threat that does. And because it is the way it is structured, I need you to understand not the story itself, but what the story will actually mean, especially when it comes to the end time scenario. So let me read the article to you. The title of the article is Iran's latest threat to Israel, 72-hour countdown to cyber attack. Look at the subtitle here, folks. It says, Bank of Israel convenes urgent preparedness session with the federal sector as Iranian hackers set Friday deadline. So, of course, as you guys are watching this video, it is Saturday, but this thing happened yesterday, or the end of the timeline for it was actually yesterday. So let's look into what the article continues to say. It says, following 2 recent cyber attacks on credit institutions and facing threats from Iranian government-affiliated groups of an imminent cyber strike against Israel planned for Friday, the Bank of Israel has called an emergency preparedness session. Now, I just want to make myself very, very clear. These preparedness sessions are very, very serious when Israel calls for them, especially as they relate to the financial sector, because you have to keep in mind, if the financial sector fails anywhere else, there are all kinds of contingencies that you can move forward into to sort of sustain the regular continuity that exists within most of these countries. But if it fails in Israel, continuity within government and continuity within just everyday living is not the greater concern. The greater concern is survival. The greatest concern is that if you don't have the financial infrastructure solidified the way that it needs to be and hardened the way that it needs to be, you are not going to have a safe country. And that's a super important aspect to be looking at, especially as we get into this story. Look what the article goes on to say. It says the high-level meeting coordinated with Israel's National Cyber Directorate included representatives from the country's major banks, credit companies, and other financial institutions. Israeli commercial airlines were also notified of the potential threat. Of course, the notification of Israeli commercial airlines would be something that you would expect, especially considering the fact that the commercial airlines have a very, very heavy tie into the same system or network that deals with all of the financial issues. And that's happening, by the way, for several reasons. It's tied to Israel's tourism industry, as well as many of their commercial operations. It's kind of a complicated discussion to be having, something that we certainly don't have the time to do here. All of that to say, if the computers that are related to Israel's credit institutions or financial institutions are compromised, then Israel's aviation institutions may very well be at risk because the computer system is shared similarly. Not completely, but certain aspects of it are definitely affected. So that's why they're bringing in the commercial airlines to speak about this potential threat. By the way, it should also be noted that if you have the financial infrastructure that becomes threatened, then travel is the next thing that you have to be worried about. And if travel is not easy, and it's something that can't happen effectively, then you begin to have a prison-like situation that creates a much bigger problem than you could ever expect, especially within the context of a country who is expanding their war footing. And that's not anything that we're really happy to talk about. Certainly Israel isn't happy about it, but as their war footing begins to grow, not by their choice, they have to be thinking about these things. I can tell you this right now, one of the hardest jobs in Israel, besides, of course, Bibi Netanyahu, has to be Israel Katz, in that what he's doing as the security minister, which is sort of the same thing as our Secretary of Defense, is a really significant thing in that he has a lot of moving parts that he has to be thinking about, and there's some very serious implications behind what this potential threat could mean. So look what the article goes on to say. It says, yesterday's situation assessment brought together senior officials from the Bank of Israel, the National Cyber Directorate, and the Cybersecurity Forum representing banks and credit card companies. They evaluated various scenarios that could unfold Friday following the Iranian Anonymous for Justice Group's threats to target Israel's financial infrastructure. By the way, one thing that I should note with this, and that is we should not be surprised when you begin to see this conglomerate of banks in Israel getting together to have these conversations. By the way, the biggest bank in Israel is ran by a Palestinian man, ran by an Arab man. So this is kind of interesting the more you begin to dig into the complexities of the leadership changes that have happened in the last several years. But it's very, very unique to see the fact that everything you're seeing happening in Israel right now is the direct opposite of all of the accusations that are being made by the rest of the world. By the way, let me just show you what the threat looked like. This is the, I think it's an X post that came up there. And of course, it's written in Hebrew and in English. And it says this: 72 hours, you still have time to save your capital. The risk of not paying attention to our warnings can come at the cost of destroying your life. And the idea here is if we can attack your money, then of course you have no hope, and we'll be able to control you and ruin you. Now, this has significant implications in Bible prophecy, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. But let me go through the rest of the story, and I'll explain why this is something that your antenna needs to be up on and something you need to be thinking about, because this is very, very important to the biblical narrative, especially during the time of this antichrist that we know is coming. So let's go on with the article. It says this: while an attack is considered likely, its precise nature and scope remain uncertain. Officials are particularly concerned about the potential disruptions to credit card clearing operations similar to the recent attacks on the SHVA clearinghouse, which could trigger increased cash withdrawals across Israel. Cyber Directorate plans to implement several countermeasures in the coming days to thwart the Iranian group's intentions. By the way, so just so you understand what this looks like and what it actually means, the average person that's out there right now are making purchases using their credit card. And the way that it works is they buy whatever it is that they're buying from their credit card. The credit card companies incentivize you to make purchases on the credit card, because if you make purchases on the credit card, you get a certain percentage back. And of course, by them giving you a certain percentage back, almost always, if you do what they expect you to do, they're going to make money off of giving you a certain percentage back, because most people will not pay back their credit card at the end of the month. And so the money that they pay in interest always pays back for the incentivization mechanism that they deploy, which is that few extra percent that you get. Now, if you are like me, or you are like a lot of people that do it this way, you'll make a purchase on your credit card. You'll darn near buy everything on your credit card. You'll get the benefit of the 3 to 5% that you get back, and you'll pay everything off at the end of the month. And so by doing it, you actually gain 3 to 5% of your purchases. And by the time a year or two goes by, that could amount to a lot. And when I say a lot, I'm talking about a lot of money. And so it works out very, very well. And so people have become generally accustomed to making purchases on their credit card with the intent to pay off the credit card at some point in some way by the end of the month. So what this scenario is aiming to do is to disable the clearing capability of these credit cards. So in other words, the credit cards won't work. And so when credit cards don't work, then you have to actually deal in cash. Now, some people say, well, if my credit card doesn't work, no big deal. I'll just use my debit card. Well, the same system that clears the credit cards is the same system that clears the debit cards. So what will end up happening inevitably is there will be a bank run. It will trigger a bank run, meaning everybody who cannot purchase with their credit cards is now running to the bank to go get cash so that they can do things like pay their rent, buy their groceries, and do all the other things that are going on. And so these people are taking this very, very seriously, because you have to understand what they need to do is maintain what they call business continuity. Because if this were to happen, then with the bank run, what it would do is it would shut down the bank and it would devalue cash. And if cash gets devalued, then the automated systems that exist for clearing and all the other things that happen with credit cards actually becomes the tool that's used against the country in completely making the economy collapse. So there's lots of contingencies that we have in the cybersecurity world to keep things like this from happening. But the whole idea behind it is, if it is a conglomerate of terrorists that are attacking, or there's some loophole that they take advantage of, whether it be through a recent update that was done or something like that, it could cripple an economy. And if it's done on the scale that these people are threatening to make it on, then what it could do is it could end cash in the society of Israel. And so if the worst case scenario happened, they lost their clearinghouse capability, they were completely incapable of using any kind of credit cards, Apple Pay can't be used, nothing like that can be used, it will trigger the bank run. And with the bank run, it will devalue currency. And so with currency being devalued, even as valuable as Israel's fiat currency is, it's a pretty remarkable picture to think that it could still go down the tubes, and it could happen very, very, very quickly. So I think one of the things that's really, really important is to recognize just how serious this could be and what the biblical implications of this really is. So let me read to you the next paragraph. It says this. It says, both the Bank of Israel and the National Cyber Directorate have urged banks, credit companies, and financial institutions to enhance their preparedness and share any relevant intelligence. Their primary goal is to maintain business continuity regardless of the attack scenario. So this is a new tactic that's being used, by the way, in the world of cybersecurity, in that these people are hardening their own network infrastructures, and they're creating these tools for interoperability, meaning these tools that allow each network to talk to one another, but while at the same time maximizing their security. So for example, my network can talk to your network, but we'll put something in between that if one or the other's networks get attacked, then the second network won't be affected. So in essence, what they're basically trying to do is set up these spider infrastructures where you've got a bunch of legs, each a different network, so that if one network fails, there's an isolation mechanism that keeps all the other networks from failing, and they end up failing over with one another. In other words, it becomes a redundancy tool, and it keeps them from being able to run into a situation where the bank completely fails, or the credit system fails, or any of that stuff fails, and they can maintain what they're calling here business continuity regardless of the attack scenario. So one person can be attacked over here, another person can be attacked over here, but the things that they're using to isolate everything keeps everybody from being affected. So let me just play out a more understandable scenario for you guys that don't have a background in any of this stuff. Hopefully it'll make it make a little bit of sense. But let's just say I have a circle of 10 people. And the circle of 10 people are really good friends. And each of them have pieces of information about the other that if they all put it together, it will create a complete story. Now, let's just say that each of these 10 friends are expecting to be attacked in one way or another. What each of these 10 friends will do is they will establish a way to be able to communicate with one another, even if they're attacked, so that what happens is if one person gets affected, the other person will not feel the effects of the attack on the first person. And so the first person who gets attacked can easily recover from the information that's being held by the other people, because they're all working together and they each have pieces of one another's information infrastructure, and it can be rebuilt. For those of you technical nerds, very much the same kind of mentality that you might see in like a SCSI parody or something like that. These are for people that know a little bit more about the technical world. It's very much that way, kind of like a raid system, same kind of a situation. So this is why they're doing this. And if you can set up an infrastructure like this, it provides the greatest level of continuity. But what Iran is seeking to do is they're seeking to destroy it altogether. And by doing that, if it does happen, if enough of these guys in this circle get attacked, then it renders all of them useless. None of them will be able to do anything. And if that happens, then guess what? You go cashless. okay, it becomes a cashless society. That's a point that I'm going to come back to in just a second. Look what it goes on to say. In response, the Bank of Israel stated, here's the quote, "The Bank of Israel maintains ongoing contact continuously and especially during these days with the banking system, the cyber directorate, and other relevant bodies to prepare and ensure continuity of various customer services according to developments." And that is a big deal because they recognize what could end up being something that is extraordinarily destructive. Remember, you take one section down, you could take many other sections down. And so what they're doing is they're looking to battle harden their infrastructure to make sure that if such an attack were to take place, assuming they cannot thwart it, assuming they cannot repel it, assuming they cannot put a stop to it, they can definitely isolate the effects that it has on whatever is being directly attacked. And so as a result, the minimization of cyber casualties will actually keep the whole system from coming down. But it's interesting because what this is showing us is this is showing us a different shift in Iran's way of thinking. It's a different shift in their mindset because their mindset is beginning to move in the technical arena, which is something that they've never been super great at, yet they're getting a lot better, especially in the types of things that we're seeing with the advent of AI and their drones and so on and so forth. This is something that's really important to not ignore. And if Israel chooses to ignore this, then Israel could put itself in a position where their infrastructure is so viably destroyed that they will not be able to do anything at all. This would affect tourism in the future. This would affect travel. This would affect banking. This would affect something as simple as money exchanging. It doesn't matter what it is. You would not be able to operate a healthy economy if you allowed this thing to come into fruition. So this is why they're looking to battle harden themselves in the area of cybersecurity. And this is why they're preparing and planning for these contingencies. Folks, I need to make myself very, very clear. The Bible tells us of a time where there will be a totalitarian ruler who will, in essence, require that in order for you to buy or sell anything, in order for you to be able to participate in doing anything that involves your survival, you will have to take the mark of the beast. And if you do not take the mark of the beast, if you do not basically do what this antichrist is asking you to do, you will not be able to buy or sell. Look what it says in Revelation 13. I'll read the verse to you. It says this, verse 16, it says, "And he causeth all," this is Revelation 13:16, "and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." And here's the key, "and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Here is wisdom. "Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, and his number is 666. And folks, I am telling you this right now. The world is preparing mankind for this world that is coming. The world is preparing mankind to receive this. There are things that we are willing to do already as it is in modern and Western society. In the name of avoiding death, in the name of avoiding injury. We are working very, very, very hard to enter into a place where we know we're going to end up in bondage. And that's the world that we're looking at right now. This world of this coming Antichrist, it's happening. By the way, we've already talked about this. We've talked about what's going on in other countries like Kuwait, for example, or other nations that are literally requiring for you to take digital biometric information, thumbprints, fingerprints, in some cases, eye scans, retinal eye scans, in order to just be able to bank. You won't be able to bank unless you give them this information. Amazon's buy and sell infrastructure that is years and years and years and years old is based on hand scanning. It's looking at your fingerprints. It's looking at your palm print. It's interesting to see where the world is going into. And there's even optical character recognition that is not based on what you see with respect to printing. It's based on what it's looking at in your eyes. And it's, I think it's called retinal recognition. I forgot exactly what it is, but it's the same thing that you experience if you have an iPhone and it scans your face and it makes a determination that it's actually you. They are looking to do things like this. You walk into a store, it scans your face, it knows exactly that it's you, and the type of technology that we see in the future is going to make sure that on your face, on your forehead, is the mark of the beast, or on your right hand, and if it's not there, then you are not going to be able to buy or sell. It will stop you from doing so. And folks, I can tell you something, it can be very, very frustrating when you have only one tool to buy something and that tool doesn't work. I was at Home Depot the other day and I went to go do a return for a plant that didn't work out. And as I was returning it, the person who sold it to us in the first place did not scan it in the system correctly. So then when I plugged in my credit card for them to give me my refund, I couldn't get the refund because for whatever reason, it didn't take the information of the credit card because of the way that it was purchased in the first place. And you have no idea how disabled you feel when the credit card doesn't work. And this is the type of thing that I think they're trying to set in Israel society. And make no mistake about it, this is the type of thing that's going to happen on the world front. Folks, this is coming to a country near you. It's happening sooner than you think, and it's not a surprise that we're seeing it in Israel. This is what I want to tell you, and I want to make myself very, very clear. None of this should freak you out. None of this should worry you. If you're a Christian, you should be looking at all of this and saying, yep, God told me this would happen. The Bible warned me of this. I am fully aware that this was around the corner and is about to be a much bigger issue than I ever thought because we know it. The Bible makes it clear. And folks, this is what I have to tell you. God has given us every reason to not only trust him, but he's given us every reason to hope in him. And he's given us every reason to be excited when we see these things because there will come a point in time where God will destroy it all. And God will bring us into the new heaven, the new earth. We're going to experience nothing but joy and peace and happiness. And by the way, the world that we live in today is an ugly world, but the life that we live is great because of what Jesus has done. So I'm here to tell you, when you read these stories and you hear about these things and you begin to make connections, trust in the Lord because the Lord has great things planned for you. Trust in Almighty God because God is doing an amazing work and you all should be thrilled. It's remarkable. Get excited, folks. Christ could come at any moment. This type of stuff should thrill you because it speaks of a future that is coming, that is beyond the capacity for so many people to be able to understand. But know this, the Bible told us it would happen thousands and thousands of years ago. It's manifesting in front of us right now, and it gives us every reason to have hope. And when I see these threats that Iran is making, when I see these types of things where Israel is running around and trying to figure it all out, the bottom line is I find great peace and joy in knowing and understanding that God is faithful and God is true and that God is real because he shows up for us time and time again. And folks, you should be excited about it. Understand this. There will be a time that will come when we will all rejoice together, living in a new heaven and a new earth. And the life that we live on this earth, as crazy as this earth is still an incredible life. Know this, if you walk with God, then this will be the closest thing to hell you will ever see. But if you're not walking with God, you better enjoy this life and take full advantage of it because this life will be the closest thing to heaven you will ever see. Remember, as Christians, this world is the closest thing to hell we'll ever see. As non-Christians, it'll be the closest thing to heaven you'll ever see. That should bring you some perspective. We have a great future ahead of us. We have a great life now. Seek the Lord, find him, trust in him, look to him for everything, and watch these stories encourage your heart. God bless you guys.